Okay, thank you for being here. We're here today to talk about the power of companality. And yes, I'm Steve Fales, and I will be presenting this little 30-minute webinar here on companality. Companality is culture, and so you've heard a lot about corporate culture. Corporate culture is in the news a lot these days if you read a lot of articles, and there's a lot of buzzwords and things around culture, and we're just going to take a few minutes and try to unpack some of that for you so you understand what culture is and how it's important in your organization. And we're going to have to start with a demonstration here, and I did mute everybody, but I'm counting on you to give me some sound effects. So right there in your office or wherever you are, I want you to give me some sound effects here when I ask now for this, all right? So here we go. You ready? Here we go. Let's go on an outing together. All right, did you make some sound effects for that? Did it sound like yay or whatever, right? Okay, but we have to stand in line. Oh, to get into Disney World. Yay, that's good. Or what about to renew your driver's license? Not so good. Why is that? Why the difference? Sure, I know that Disney is the happiest place on earth, but why such a difference from one place to the other? What makes that difference? Why is it that some companies, some organizations just seem that everybody there is gung-ho, and other places just seems like it's a drag? And it's pretty much consistent across the board. There has to be something going on, and there is. And that's called organizational culture. And that's what we're going to talk about. Companies are like a container, and a container gives a clue to what's inside. People do judge the book by its cover. So if I were to invite you over to a barbecue at my house, and I handed you the hot dog, and I handed you this container, and you took that container, you tipped it over, and you put a squeeze on it, and out came out mayonnaise, you'd say, well, whoa, something's wrong here. You know, what's going on? Because you don't expect mayonnaise to come out of that container. You expect mustard to come out of that container. Just by looking at the container, you know what's inside. Well, how does that apply to business? Well, let's talk about me going to the doctor's office. My doctor retired. I had to find a new doctor. And so I went to a doctor, and there I did all the paperwork, signed in. They took me back to the little room, and now I'm there. I am in the room. I am a customer, and this is what I saw. Not too inviting, right? So let me ask you, could this doctor be a great doctor, have a great bedside manner, be very educated, etc.? Well, of course he could. But is this the kind of doctor you would want? Well, probably not. And it has nothing to do with how good of a doctor he is. It has everything to do with the culture of his organization. So culture does indeed affect business. What do we got here? Oh, an air conditioning truck from Acme Air Conditioning. Wow. Let me ask you a question. Could a very skilled technician or installer show up in that truck? Well, yeah, it's possible. But would you expect it? No, you wouldn't. You see, so culture sincerely affects operations. It affects business. Because if people see that truck drive up, they're going to make a conclusion about what's inside that package, even if it might not be true. Well, let's drive away and talk about some other things, because we all know we wouldn't send a truck like that if we had an air conditioning company. But what about your branding? What about your logo? And what about the materials that you put out? What do they say about your company? What about the way your staff is dressed? How about the way your phones are answered? You know, a lot of times we take the lowest paid person in our company and we put them on the phone, we give them no training at all, and yet this person is affecting our culture and the way people look at the package of our business. The attitudes around the office and out in the field, what are people saying to one another? What do customers overhearing? Is there good teamwork, or are people kind of fighting and having office politics? And what else? Other. And I want to just give you a little clue that when I say other and show you that blank line there, whatever it is that popped into your head and that you think goes on that line, that's the thing that you need to address in your culture, because it's affecting your business. Because culture lies underneath operations. Your operations are what people see, but the culture is what's below that and what's affecting the way your company operates. So you've got to really pay attention to this thing of culture. Culture is built on certain characteristics, right? We have attitudes, the overall point of view that we take to life. We have our values. What do we think is important? What's not important? What do we consider right and wrong? What's our moral fiber? What's our work ethic, our life ethic? How much effort do we exert during the day? And when you put all those together, when you wrap them up in a person, if you look at a person's attitudes, values, morals, work ethic, life ethic, we call that the person's personality. So I'm going to give you a new vocabulary word today. In a person, we have a personality. In a company, we have a companality. So that's the word, companality. So that's a word I invented. I actually put a registered trademark on it. So companality. So we're going to talk about what is your companality. What's the personality of your company? And you're going to find that it's pretty consistent, right? I mean, we have people on this call right now from all over the country. And if we were to go into a Starbucks or a 7-Eleven, a post office, a McDonald's, we're going to see a pretty consistent companality, a pretty consistent culture in all of those, no matter where we are in the country. And you've got to ask yourself, how did that happen? It didn't happen by accident. It happened intentionally. And it has an amazing effect on the customers that are attracted, on the employees that the companies attract, and on the company's reputation. It's really make or break important. And the big thing for you and I to remember is that your company has a companality right now. Your company has a culture right now. Where did that culture come from? Well, it came from your industry, right? So a law office is going to have a much different culture than a surf shop as far as the way people dress and when they show up for work and when they don't show up for work and the vocabulary that they use and whatnot. So your industry affects your culture, certainly. But some other things affect your culture too. What about her? What about strong-willed employees? You know, they can determine the culture because whatever they get away with, whatever they do around the office can severely affect the culture. And what you as a management allows affects the culture. You know, you can say, these are the rules, you can do this, you can't do that, but if people respond this way, well, you tell me I can, but no thanks, or you tell me I can't, but yes, I can, that's the true culture. So if you have a culture that says everybody's at their desk and working by 8:30, and yet people straggle in at 8:45 and 9 o'clock, what's the real culture? Who's determining the culture? So your industry affects the culture and determines the culture, strong-willed employees, management, whatever management allows. Or the better way is to have the company leaders develop that culture. And that's, of course, what we want to do. Here's an article that appeared in the Wall Street Journal in September last year. You've heard the story, Wells Fargo fined for sales scam. And by the way, in that very same Wall Street Journal, the very same day, Wells Fargo ran this ad. Our commitment to you is we want to satisfy our customers' financial needs. This is the vision and values of Wells Fargo. Now, that's kind of ironic that on the same day they're telling us this, there's an article saying how they were fined for a sales scam. But the thing is that I truly believe that there are people up in the C-suite of Wells Fargo, the leaders of the company, who really do want to satisfy their customers' financial needs. But for some reason, that culture did not permeate down through the organization. Maybe they didn't hire the right people. They didn't hire honest people. Maybe they incentivized their people in the wrong way. But for some reason, the culture that was supposed to permeate did not. And obviously, they've had some severe problems. So management, leadership did not actually determine the culture. Other factors determine the culture. So how would you define your company's culture, your companality? What's it like right now? I think that's something for you to think about. And what or who is driving it? Well, the good news is you can intentionally develop your organization's companality. And that's what we're going to look at here in the next few minutes, is just some things, some ways that you can intentionally develop your companality. And that's why we have here the slogan under the companality logo, developing intentional organizational culture. Okay, how to do it? How to build that companality? Well, the first thing is you got to have a vision, right? So how do you want it to look? What are the factors that you want? And in order to determine that, I invented this little thing I call the companality continuum. And you know how a continuum works is you start with a topic and you put something, one extreme on one end and the other extreme on the other end, and that's what a continuum is. And in this case, on the companality continuum, neither one of these is better. We're not going to talk about whether anything is better or worse. We're just going to talk about your vision. What do you want? That example I used earlier that said, well, everybody's sitting at their desk at 8:30 ready to work, and yet people come in at 9. Well, I'm not saying either one is better. What I'm saying is you as a leadership need to determine what you want as your vision for your organizational culture and then build that. So let's just look at a few examples. Is your company leader-directed or is it individually directed? In other words, do people have autonomy or do they pretty much rely on the boss for their signals? You've got to decide that. Neither one is better, but what's your vision? Do people work alone and report upward or do they work in teams? Or how about offices? Are they private offices or an open environment? Do you have strict office hours or flex time? Is your dress code business formal or casual? Do you have a neat and tidy policy, or is it okay for people to have some clutter around there? Is silence golden, or is everybody wearing their headphones and listening to their music and whatnot? Technology, are you cutting edge, or do you stick with manual processes? So neither of these is better, but what you want to do is figure out for your own organization what your vision is, and many other factors. So that's step one, creating that vision. So I would ask you this today, what is your companality vision? Of course, I don't expect you to do it right now while we're on the phone here, but that's your first step, develop that vision. Okay, next, once you know what you want, you've got a staff for it. And this is such a brutal principle. I don't like it, but it's true. You cannot hire people first and then convert them to your culture later. You have got to hire them with culture top of mind. So once you know what you want your culture to be, then you've got to look for people who match your culture and not the other way around. And the way you do it starts right when you write your help wanted ad. You're going to write that ad in such a way that it will attract people who meet your companality vision. That gets a little bit involved. We can't get into all the details of that right now, but we could certainly talk about that offline if you want it. But helping the help wanted ad, writing that in such a way that it attracts the right people. How about this? When you're interviewing, testing people, evaluating them, examining the chemistry that exists between you and the candidates and between your office and the candidates, matching those people to your vision. So there are various tests and evaluations that you can do that will help you determine if this person matches your culture. And I can help turn you on to some of those if this interests you. When you make the offer, you always want to tell people that their matching to your culture was one of the reasons that they were hired. So you say, well, Joe, well, Sally, the reason we chose you over all the other candidates is because you had this skill and this skill and this skill, but also because we felt that you matched our culture, that you would be a fit for our culture. And then when you train people with the orientation, you want to, again, underscore culture. Culture is important here. And what you want is for them to say, wow, this company is serious about this, and go home and tell their husband, tell their wife, tell their friends, wow, I'm working for a company that's really serious about this culture thing. So you've got a staff with culture in mind. The next step is to get buy-in. You don't want to just dictate the culture to people. You want them to collaborate and to help define the culture. And you can do this because you've hired the right people. So get people to ask questions and listen to their feedback. You want to explain the benefits. What you want to get to is this: everybody having a piece of the puzzle and saying, this is our culture. Now, it takes time. You've got to work on that through your organization. And if people push back, well, we'll get to that in a minute. But this is the goal. You want everybody on board believing that the culture is their culture. Training. Training is so important. And where does training happen? Well, it happens in formal settings like you see there on the top left in your conference room or a training room. But it happens in the hallway, doesn't it? When people are just talking in the lunchroom, at the water cooler. That's where training happens. And that's why it's so important that your veterans are immersed in the culture and buy into the culture, because they're going to be the ones over there on the right side you see that are going to be helping the new people climb up that ladder of culture. So it's very important that the training all the time, whether formal, whether at the water cooler, or whether mentoring, is all in line with your culture and the vision that you have for your own companality. And the next thing you want to do is communicate. And what are the principles? What are the standards for communication? Well, they're really simple. Who? Everybody. Everybody needs to be involved in the communication. What? Everything. When? All the time. And how? Every way possible. Now, I know that as a business owner, there may be some things that are confidential or some things that people don't necessarily even want to know. But I'm talking about when it comes to cultural matters, when it comes to things going on in the company, you want to keep everybody in the loop with as much information as you can all the time in every way you can. So that means emails and posters and videos if you can, and just talks as you walk around through your shop or through your office. But communication, I've never been in a company where people said they just communicate too much around here. No, communication is key, and we never do enough of it. Okay, the next thing is modeling. You know, people catch as much as they're taught, right? So companality or anything is caught as much as it's taught. So you've got to model, you've got to be brutal on yourself. As a leader, we've got to be the toughest on ourselves to make sure that we are modeling the culture all the time. So whatever we say that vision is, if we have a dress code, we've got to live up to that dress code. If we believe in a certain level of technology, we've got to embrace it ourselves. We've got to be toughest on ourselves to model the culture that we have determined that we want in our vision. And sadly, this is not a happy one, but we've got to enforce it. You've got to keep that bar high and keep people jumping over that bar, never letting that bar down. If you don't, this is what you're going to get. Well, I guess it wasn't really that important. And that's really what happens, isn't it, at a lot of companies. We got posters in the break room that say such and such, but we don't model, we don't enforce, and we don't communicate, we don't train, and people wind up saying, I guess it wasn't really that important. We don't want that. So we have to do all these things we're talking about. And the last one here is to reward and counsel people. Rewarding means this: catching people doing something right? Handing out those gold stars. So you want to make sure that you always try to notice when people are doing things that are in line with the culture. I know here at our company we have an award that we give where people specifically do things that match our culture, our vision of our culture. So you want to have some kind of maybe incentive program, or just walking around patting people on the back who do something right. And by something right, I mean things that are in line with your culture. That's the reward part. What about the counsel part? Well, that's something that none of us really like, and I'm going to show you a word now that's going to put fear, that puts fear into most human beings, but we're going to talk about it just for a minute, and that word is confrontation. And boy, oh boy, nobody likes confrontation. And Even leaders don't like to confront. So many people are afraid to confront. And the reason for that is that we have this definition, this first definition of confrontation in our minds. We think of it as a hostile or argumentative meeting or situation between opposing parties. And that's how we think of confrontation. But you know what? That's really a wrong definition. I want to take you back to the online etymology dictionary. And etymology, as you know, is the study of word origins. So if we look at the origin of the word confrontation, and this is really great. This can change your life in ways far beyond what we're talking about today. But the origin of the word confrontation goes back to the 1630s. If you look at that, it says the action of bringing two parties face to face. And so if we think about that, just bringing two parties face to face, it's not so bad, right? We see here that really it got bad. The word got bad in 1963 in the Cuban Missile Crisis, according to the etymology dictionary. But really what it means is bringing two parties face to face. Face to face doesn't have to be like that one on the left there. Face to face can be like that one on the right. And so when we think about counseling people, let's think about confrontation in this kind of a way. That, hey, let's just get face to face. Let's look at this thing. Let's talk about this thing. We're mature adults, and I'm sure we can come to some kind of an understanding here. And if we've done the other parts that we talked about, right, if we've gotten buy-in on our culture, then we have a mutual agreement about where we want to go. And so this confrontation, this act of being face-to-face, doesn't have to be that bad because we all have the same goals. We've communicated those goals. We've modeled, and we're enforcing, and we've rewarded. So when it gets to the counseling part, the confrontation part, it doesn't have to be an ugly situation. So that's how we develop companality. We have a vision. We staff according to that vision. We get everybody to buy in. We train them constantly. We communicate all the time, everything. We model. We're just brutal on ourselves as leaders. We enforce the culture so that people know it's important. We reward people when they meet the culture, and we counsel and confront people when things go awry. And then the process continues. It never ends. You've got to always be honing that vision and staffing properly, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is an ongoing thing. You can't just do it once. Developing companality is a major factor, as we've seen, and it's something that has to continue. So it's a fact. We're wrapping up now. It's a fact that every organization has a companality, whether it's a retail store or a school or a pharmacy or a construction company or a fire department, whatever it is. Your organization, our organization, has a companality. So was it created by default, just kind of hit or miss, or was it created intentionally? That's what you're going to have to answer yourself. And now I'm at the last slide. I'm going to unmute everybody, and I promised you we would be done in 30 minutes. We're about 5 minutes shy of that. If you need to jump off, you certainly can, or if you have any questions I can answer, I'd be glad to. You can ask them, or you can put them in the chat box. Of course, if you want to learn more, this company, Ad Services, we consult people on their organizational culture, on their companality. We have some case studies that we could send you and talk to you about. And if you'd like to know more about this, we're happy to do that. So let me go ahead now and unmute. And I'm actually at the end of my presentation, but you're up if you want to be. Okay, somebody sent a chat here. What are some tools that are useful in developing a companality? Well, that's a great question, of course, and there are many things. Some of the things that we've done are incentive programs where we, again, it starts with the vision, right? So we work with the leadership to develop their vision, and then we help incentivize people toward that. They've done simple things like having small Starbucks gift cards where people could just walk around, or leadership could just walk around and hand them out? How about a random surprise phone call from the CEO? You know, it's rare that a lot of rank and file people get a call from the CEO, but what if the CEO just called up and said, way to go, I heard something, you did something. Maybe a specific place in the office where people can post attaboy type of postings to give kudos to their coworkers, email blasts, customized posters around the office, those types of things. So those are just some quick answers. To get more specific, we would have to talk about a specific company's vision and then develop those things. Orientation items have been a part of that, a video from the CEO that underscores the culture. I'm just trying to think of some things that we've done for other companies, but those are some tools that come to mind. Hope that answers your question. Okay. All right. This person wrote thank you, so I guess that answered the question. Great. All right. Well, we are at 11:58. We promised to be done by noon Eastern, so I will just say thank you. You can see my email address down there, steve@adservices.net. If you would like a copy of this recording, we can send that to you. If you have any questions about organizational culture, certainly feel free to send those as well. And at this point, I will now sign off. So thanks, everybody, for joining, and I hope you got something that you can take back to your company as you develop your own organizational culture.